Is the pay good? What is the hardest part of ship life? Are there rules about relationships? Do you get bored of visiting the same ports over and over? What is the worst part about this job? What happens if you don't get along with your roommates? Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, so happy you joined us. My name is Jordan. I am a professional figure skater and I'm currently working and living on board a cruise ship. I'm not entirely sure if the camera is shaking. We are currently tendering in Santorini, which is amazing, but we just gotta make do because the ship is shaking a little bit and the camera looks like it's going crazy. So I really hope that it's okay. But anyways, today's video is a fun one because we are sitting down and we are chit-chatting. I feel like I haven't done this in a while, even though I love to yap. So today I thought it'd be fun to answer a ton of frequently asked questions regarding cruise ship life and living and working on board. So I did prompt ChatGPT to list out 100 FAQs about cruise ship life. And today we're gonna be answering all of them. So we're gonna be diving into a bunch of different topics, some generic questions, some more specialized questions, and I'm just gonna give you the rundown of what it's really like to work on board. A little bit of background information about me. If you are new here, I have been working and living on board a cruise ship for over 6 years now. So this is currently my 7th cruise ship contract. And yeah, it's been quite an amazing run so far. I do post 2 videos a week here on YouTube, but I am posting more frequently over on Instagram and TikTok. So if you want to follow me there, I'll have it linked below for you. But without further ado, we're going to just jump right into the questions because we have a lot to get to. As I said, I prompted ChatGPT. I always say ChatGTP, like I'll probably say it again incorrect, but I prompted ChatGPT to give me 100 questions. And these are broken down into different categories. So the categories are general life on board, work life, ports and travel, safety and security, food and drinks, money and benefits, social life, and career and personal. So we're gonna just run down the line. I'm gonna share as much as I can with you and also based on my experience as a performer on board. Obviously, it's a different situation depending on where you work and like what your responsibilities are. So this is all based on my personal experience. First question, pretty standard. What is it like living on a cruise ship full time? It is unlike anything you will ever experience in your lifetime. It feels like a different world, truly. It is such a unique experience and I really feel like you learn so much about yourself and about other people in this environment. It's a very fast-paced environment and so you just have to roll with the punches and really just go with the flow because you never know what each day is going to bring you. And you really can learn a lot about yourself and about the world if you are open to it. It can be a very exciting environment, but it can also be a very stressful and demanding environment. So you just have to really take it day by day and make the most of the experience because it can be a bit chaotic at times, but overall, it truly has been a dream job for me for the past 6 years. Question number 2, do you get seasick? I personally do not get seasick. I know that some people do. We are working on a ship that's quite large, so you really don't feel normal movement of the ship all too often. If it is a really rough day at sea, you are gonna feel it, but even when it is rocky, I don't feel any sort of seasickness, luckily. There are tablets that we can take if we do have seasick symptoms. Number 3, how small are your cabins? I do have a cabin tour coming for you in the future. Get excited for that. But the cabins are very small. I have learned to really get used to the space that we're living in, so much so that when I go home at the end of the contract, my room at home feels massive. Cabins are really small. You have 2 twin-size bunk beds. Obviously, if you have more privileges or a higher ranking, you might have a different room setup. But for myself personally, I share a bunk bed with my roommate Jackie. But we make do with the space and we make it as cozy as possible. Question number 4, do crew members get their own bathrooms? So you don't get your own, specifically like one bathroom per person, but we do share a bathroom with our roommate. But if you're in a double occupancy room, so it's you and a roommate, you have a bathroom for the 2 of you. It is nothing like a college dorm where you have to walk down the hall and use like a communal shower or bathroom. It's nothing like that. Question number 5, how is the food in the crew mess? So the food is not bad. We definitely don't get as wide of a selection as the guests do. Of course, they're paying to come on vacation on board. However, we do have quite a good range of food, and depending on the ship and who's in charge, sometimes we even get different like theme nights in the mess. For the most part, day to day, the food is pretty much the same. So they serve the same sorts of food every single day. So we've got always tons of bread, we've got rice, chicken, soups, spaghetti, some sort of beef stew. We get lots of fruits, there's always desserts. So there's quite a selection of different things. Question number 6, do you get free Wi-Fi on board? We do not. We do not get free Wi-Fi. I can't say that this is the case for every cruise line, but for me specifically, we don't get Wi-Fi on board. So we are given 120 minutes per week, which is 2 hours of Wi-Fi a week, which is really nice. So I do try to use that sparingly, and I try not to purchase any additional Wi-Fi because it can be very expensive. So luckily with this contract, we are in port almost every single day. So I do have international service and I can pretty much rely on that. But it can be challenging when we're either on a crossing or if we have a different itinerary where we have many more sea days. Sort of going along with that question, how often can you contact your family? So one thing that we do get for free is WhatsApp. So we have a free Wi-Fi. It doesn't work for internet, but WhatsApp does work with this Wi-Fi access, and we're able to message home. We can message literally anyone who has WhatsApp, which is really nice. So this is the easiest way to stay in contact with friends and family at home. I try to call as much as I can, but calling doesn't work with this connection. Only texting does. So oftentimes I'll send voice memos or I will call as often as I can in port, but I can text daily, which is really nice. Moving on, question number 8, what do you do on sea days? So sea days really depend on the schedule. Schedule is always changing depending on the week, but for the most part, we typically have a full day of work on the sea day. Sea days are usually the busiest day for any crew member on board. For this contract in particular, we start the morning off with all skates. So we have public skating for the guests, and then in the evenings we have 2 shows. So that is pretty much the jam-packed day. On a rare occasion, it might be morning all skates, matinee shows, and then dressing the production show in the evening, but that has only happened a couple of times. So usually it's all skates and shows in the evening. Number 9, how do you deal with being away from home for so long? Honestly, I get used to it. I didn't really have a tough time adjusting to that. Even on my first contract, I settled into this world very easily. It definitely, like I said, is different than anything else. It's very different from life on land. Once you settle into a routine here, it's very easy to be away from home for months on end. Number 10, what is the hardest part of ship life? This answer can vary depending on who's answering it. For myself personally, I'm finding the hardest part about ship life is missing out on big, important moments in friends and family's lives. I'm at an age where a lot of my friends are getting engaged and married and having babies, and unfortunately I just can't be home for all of that. And obviously because I am getting older, this is a priority to me. I do want to be there for them and all these exciting moments, and it's really hard to be away from home when all of that is happening. So I would say that's definitely the most difficult. Number 11, do you have roommates? So depending on your position and again your privileges, what sort of room dynamic you have, room situation, you might not have a roommate. I personally have a roommate. My roommate is in the ice cast with me, Jackie, and she was my first roommate on my first contract. So it's a very full circle moment. But roommates can definitely be a tricky situation because the room is so small and you're living in such a tiny space with another person. If you don't get along or you have opposing schedules, it can be difficult. I've been very, very lucky with my living situation since I've been on board, and I've always really loved my roommates. So I don't really have many stories to share on that, but for sure, other people do. Which kind of leads me to the next question. What happens if you don't get along with your roommate? So usually you try to figure it out, and if you can't, you are able to request to switch cabins. So it's not a guarantee that it'll happen straight away. It all depends if there's availability for another room for you to move into, or if there's someone specific that you want to live with, you can request to change cabins. And that is a process that is possible if, for say, you don't get along with your roommate or you just don't want to live with them for whatever reason. So ideally, you don't want to do that because you unpack, you settle in, and that's like your space. So it's kind of a hassle to move cabins, but sometimes it is necessary and it is an option for us as crew members in case we don't love our living situation. Do you get privacy on board? It's very difficult to get privacy on board, especially if you share the room because, you know, it's their space as much as it is yours. So it is pretty rare to have the room to yourself. But like anything, I think communication is key. So if you just have a conversation with your roommate and say, hey, like I just want the room to myself for an hour or two, just like to have peace and quiet, they should respect that and vice versa. But you are on a cruise ship with a lot of people, a lot of guests and a lot of crew members, and it's quite hard to find a space where you are alone. So it is possible to get privacy for sure, but it's something that you kind of have to organize. Question 14, is it noisy in the crew areas? Depends where you are. Overall, no, it's not really. Most places are quite quiet. The crew bar is going to be busier, especially in the evenings. They usually have music playing. Sometimes they have bingo running. If you go by like the games area, maybe people are playing video games, so that can get a little bit noisy, but overall, it's pretty quiet, I would say. And the corridors are super quiet. Do you get laundry service or do you wash your own clothes? We do not get laundry service. We do have laundry machines on board that we are able to use, which is phenomenal. We don't have to pay for them. We just have to get our own detergent. So we do our own laundry on board, which is definitely my least favorite task, but it's got to get done. What is the crew gym like? I do not ever use the crew gym because I have the privilege to work out in the guest gym, and it's just much bigger and there's more equipment and there's more weights and things like that. And you have a lot of natural light, which I love. So I work out in the guest gym, but the crew gym is pretty much the same. It definitely is smaller, but you have all of the similar machines. You've got a treadmill, you've got a bike, an elliptical, you have free weights, you have a squat rack, yoga mats, things like that. It's pretty typical gym equipment. Number 17, do crew members have their own pool? This would be amazing, but unfortunately, we do not. Are there curfews for crew? No. We're all adults here, so there's no curfew. How much free time do you actually get? This is another question, like I said, really depends on who you're asking. I am in the ice show on board. I'm a performer, so our schedule is definitely unconventional compared to other people who work on board. We have shows in the evenings and we start warm up in the afternoon, and I start hair and makeup before that. So all in all, that's quite the process. We don't have standard shifts of work, if that makes sense. So we do get quite a bit of time off in port. We have other duties on board as well, but those are usually in the evenings or in the mornings, so afternoons are pretty free for us. So I do feel very fortunate because of that, and I've been able to see a lot of the world and really get to see the ports because we have the free time to get off and enjoy and make the most of it. The last question of this section, is the ship ever scary in rough seas? To be honest, yes. I'm very comfortable being on the ship, especially when it's rocky, but there have been a couple times where I've actually been a little bit scared. The weather is horrible outside and we're, doing a transatlantic crossing, so we're in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of nowhere, basically. So that can be a bit of a frightening thought. However, there's other ships nearby. It's not like one cruise ship just crosses without any ships in the vicinity. I don't really know how it works, but I want to say with maritime law, they have some sort of organization so that there's always a ship somewhat relatively close if you needed assistance. I mean, I've done crossings on almost every single contract, and it hasn't been a scary experience for me. We're moving on to the next section, which is work life. Question 21, how many hours a day do you work? This one I honestly don't know because it depends on the day. I'll just use day one as an example. It's embarkation day when new guests come on board. We have to work muster 2.0. So that's a 3.5 hour shift, and then shows are at 7 and 9 p.m., but we do start preparing for the shows many hours before that. So I would say in total, I work about 10 hours on turnaround day in total. But that also includes like preparation time, which of course is necessary in order to do the shows. Do you get days off? This one really depends on the ship you are working on and the itinerary and the schedule. There's a lot of factors that go into it. On this contract, I usually have at least 1 day a week, fully no duties, which is so lovely. Question 23, how strict are the rules? Quite strict. We have a lot of rules we need to follow, and they're in place for a reason. So you do have to be smart, but I think all of the rules are quite reasonable, and you just have to, do your job well, follow the rules, and you'll be fine. Some things are subject to dismissal, and some things are zero tolerance. So there's no discussion whatsoever. You're gone. But that sounds a little bit intimidating. It's really not. Question 24, how many contracts have you done? This is my 7th contract, which is wild. And all of my contracts have been quite long. Question 25, what is a typical length of a contract? On average, I would say a contract is usually anywhere from 7 to 8 months long. I have had a contract be 6 months long. I've also had a contract that was 10 months long. So it really can vary, but the average is anywhere from 7, 7.5, or 8 months. How hard is the work physically? Overall, for myself personally, it's very, very manageable. We do get ample amount of time to rest and recover and recharge our bodies. The show is quite demanding on our bodies, but here it is a bit more relaxed. Just the show track is not quite as high energy or as challenging, I would say, as my previous contract. And we aren't doing all too many shows. We're only doing 4 to 5 shows a week, which is very, very manageable. But over time, being on board and, being here for many months on time doing the same show, by the end of the contract, you are definitely fatigued a bit, and you can feel like a little bit of tightness, aches, pains here and there. But overall, physically here is not too difficult. And again, I just want to stress that this is based on my personal experience. I understand other positions around the ship are very physically demanding. They're on their feet for many, many hours a day, every day, and I respect them so much. But this is going off of my personal experience and what I know to be true. We have changed scenery, and clearly I look a little different. We've got the hair done, lashes on, and I did just warm up for our show tonight. So we took a quick pause. It's been a couple hours, but we're back to answer the rest of the questions. So I think we were on number 26. Picking up right where we left off, question 27, do you get to choose your ship? So as a member of the IceCast, we can request ships or show interest for specific ships. However, there's no guarantee that we'll get them. It really depends on what our boss decides. So we can express interest, and she either can say yes, or she can ask for an audition, and you can learn whatever solo she wants you to do, hypothetically, in the show. So you have to learn that solo, record it, and send it. And that's basically an audition for the next ship. But we don't need to audition every single contract. This is just if you want something specific. And if it's very highly requested, that tends to happen. Okay, kind of building on that question, can you request certain itineraries? So technically, no. You have to do the research yourself and see where the ship is going to be traveling to. So if you want something specific, you can kind of look into that and then request that specific ship. But it also heavily depends on the timeline of things. So if it works out with your timing of when you want to go on a contract, etc. 29, what is the training like? We do have a lot of trainings when it comes to other things around the ship. So we have a lot of online trainings, and we also have plenty of onboard trainings. So whenever you sign on a new contract, you have quite a few trainings you have to do in person. You do a walk around of the ship. You do all the safety trainings thoroughly over and over again, along with many other trainings. So there's a lot of trainings that we need to do, and a lot of them expire after a contract. Some expire after 6 months, some expire after a year, so it just sort of depends how often you have to renew them. Question 30, do you get promoted easily? As an IceCast member, the only way we can get promoted is to be ice captain, and this also depends on our boss, who she wants to be the ice captain for a specific cast. You do have to do this GSNL training. It's called Getting Started as a New Leader, and you basically learn leadership techniques and yeah, it's a leadership course. So that is something that is strongly suggested you do. But after that, it goes into the hands of course, my boss. Okay, 31, do you get tips as a crew member? As an ice cast performer, we do not. How are crew members paid? So crew members are paid bi-weekly. So every other week we get a paycheck, and we can also have that money linked to our CPAS card on board. So we can use that to buy things like soda, snacks, if we want to eat at a specialty restaurant, spend money in the shops, things like that. Is the pay good? So I can't speak on behalf of every crew member on board because I just, A, don't know how much exactly people make, and B, it's not my place. But for myself, I am happy with the salary that I make, and also the fact that we can save all of our money if we wanted because we have little to no expenses on board. Do you get healthcare on board? So when we are on a contract, we do get healthcare. We are covered. If something does happen when we are on a contract, the company will cover it, which is really, really nice. It's just one less expense for us because insurance is very expensive. What happens if you get injured on the job? So I made a video about me getting a little injury probably about a month back. I made a full recovery, but you can check that out if you want. But I go in depth about the whole process. So if that happens when you're on board and it's nothing major to the point where you can return to work in, you know, a short amount of time, then you stay on board. Otherwise, if it's a more serious injury, you will be sent home and you do get paid while you are injured at home. 36, do you ever have to do emergency drills? We do them all the time. Yes, we do. Next question, how often are safety drills held? So we do a crew drill every single week. So once a week we have drill to make sure that everyone knows their emergency duties perfectly. Do you ever have to work in passenger areas? So of course, Studio B is a public venue. So when we perform the show, yes, we are in Studio B. We also work in Studio B when we do public skate. And then for Muster 2.0, which is the safety briefing every turnaround day, we're somewhere around the ship at one of the stations. Can you eat in guest restaurants? We can. So it depends what it is. The dining room we cannot eat in unless we have family on board. Windjammer we can eat in for dinner after 8 p.m. And then all the specialty restaurants, so the restaurants you have to pay for, we can eat in. Number 40, do you wear uniforms all the time? I rarely wear uniform. I wear it when I'm, you know, having either all skates or Muster 2.0, but on a daily basis when I'm not on duty, I'm hanging out in loungewear. That's my getup usually, but most people are. We're moving on to the next section, which is ports and travel. Question 41 says, do you get to explore ports on work days? Depending on how much time you have, yes, you are able to do so. For example, today we're in Santorini and I did not get off the ship. However, I could have because I had the morning available to do so. I just didn't because you have to take a tender off the ship. So you have to get on another little boat, take that to the shore, and then you take a cable car all the way up. So it's a bit of a process, but it's not like this on every single port day. So even when I have work, no matter what time, I like to get off, even if it's just for a little walk around. What is your favorite port so far? This is a hard question because I've been to so many amazing places. Oh my goodness. I'm just gonna go with my tried and true answer, which is Stockholm, Sweden. I just love that city so much. There's so much to see and do and so many cute cafes and of course fika and shopping, and it's beautiful as well and very walkable. So I guess that'll be my answer for now. Do crew members need visas for every country? So as an American, I do not need a visa, or I haven't needed a visa up until this point working in the company. I did have to apply for the Australian visa when we do make our way over there, but I do know that most crew members from other countries do need a visa to work on board. 44, do you have to stay on board sometimes? Of course, this happens. And I know that this happens a lot more for other crew members. For my personal experience, there have been times that I haven't had the chance to get off because I have too much going on board, but it just is part of it. 45, do you ever get tired of traveling? Honestly, no. I think that when we come back to the same place over and over again, if I am having a day where I feel more tired and have less energy, I might take that day to recharge and just spend a day on board, knowing that I'm gonna be there again next week. I wouldn't say I ever get sick or tired of traveling. I love traveling and I love seeing and discovering new places and things and just soaking in all that I can. Do you get to join guest excursions? So this is a great question because they have this program for crew members where we can basically tag along with one of the shore excursions and we review it so that the company can better improve the excursion experience for the guests. So we do have to help and we do work when we're there, but we get to enjoy the excursion at no cost. And then we write a review. We have to answer a lot of questions so that they can improve on the excursion if there's anything that needs to be adjusted. What is the longest you've stayed in one port? Overnights are always the longest port days because you have however long the first day you arrive, you stay there overnight, and then you have the next day as well. So my longest port day was in Reykjavik. We arrived at like 7 or 8 a.m. and then we didn't leave until the following day at around 8 p.m. So we had a full day, which was incredible. Full 2 days really, which was amazing. I do have a vlog on that if you want to see, but that was the last time I was on Voyager. Question 48, do you collect souvenirs from each country? If you've been following me, you would know, but the souvenir I collect in every single destination is postcards because they are very inexpensive, they're very cute, they're very easy to find, and they're very easy to pack as well. Do you get bored of visiting the same ports over and over? To be honest, yes, but it really depends on the port. There are some ports that I could go to time and time again, and I will never get bored. I will never get sick of it. There's just so much to see and you just always have something different to do. And then there's some ports where it really is sort of limited what activities they have, so you can get a bit bored of it, even when you try to branch out and do different things. And it's a very privileged thing to say, but there really are some ports that just don't have a ton. And also when you're trying to save your money and not spend everything every time you get off the ship, it can make things a little challenging. Again, it really depends where you are. Question 50, how much time do you usually have off in port? So this really varies. I'm sorry, this is not a detailed answer. Usually we get around half the day, which is very nice. But again, it depends on the schedule and the day. Some days you have less, some days you have a little more, just depends. It is a couple days later and we are continuing on with the questions. We're halfway through the questions. We've got 50 more to fly through, so a lot more to come. But honestly, I ran out of time when we were filming before shows because obviously I had to go to work. So now we're sitting down, I've got water, I gotta hydrate. I was out in the sun today and we're getting back to it. So we are moving on to the next section, which is safety and security. We have 10 questions for this topic. So question 51, have you ever experienced an emergency at sea? I personally have not ever experienced this. However, I do know people who have, and they had to step into their emergency duties, which is why it's so important everyone knows what they're doing on board. What happens if someone gets sick on board? So we do have a medical center. If you had seen my previous video about when I got injured, they took care of me. I had daily appointments and checkups and things like that. So the same thing goes if you are sick. The medical team will take care of you. In some situations, you might have to be isolated. Just sort of depends on what kind of sickness you might be dealing with. How do you handle storms or hurricanes? Because of the technology these days, usually they can see a storm or a hurricane that's building or growing and we can avoid it altogether. So if there is, say, a hurricane, we just reroute the ship and they can see this days in advance, so it never really becomes an issue. In some cases, we might have to divert to a different port or it'll become a sea day. Is piracy still a concern? It's still technically a concern, yes, but cruise ships don't really go anywhere near the areas where that is, I guess, known to be more dangerous. So of course it's something to always be aware of, but it's not really a daily issue. What is the protocol for a man overboard? This one I can't really answer in detail, but we do have a whole system in place how we handle this sort of emergency. Do you ever feel unsafe on board? Honestly, I feel the safest on board. Compared to anywhere else that I've ever been in the world, I feel truly so safe on board. How secure are the crew areas? They're quite secure. There's also cameras everywhere, literally everywhere, not only in like guest areas, also in crew areas. There's videos everywhere. a lot of places you do need a key to enter, so yeah, I feel very safe in crew areas. What happens if a guest causes problems? So this is entirely up to the security team. I don't know how any of this is handled, but basically that is something that they take care of. Depending on what the situation is, they'll make decisions accordingly. But as a performer, I don't really encounter that. Okay, do crew have lifeboat assignments? 100% yes. So with our emergency duties, we have a specific lifeboat or life raft that we need to go to. Have you ever had to evacuate a ship? I have not ever had to do this. Next section, food and drinks. My favorite. Do you get unlimited food on board? Yes, we do. You go to the mess and you can eat as little or as much as you'd like, and you can go as many times as you want. Is the food different for crew versus passengers? It definitely is. We only have we have 2 different messes that we can eat in, and the food is typically the same sort of food every day. They do have different themes every once in a while, but we aren't served quite the same thing and the same amount of variety as the passengers. Of course, there's way more passengers on board than there is crew members, so the food is different, but you do sometimes see similar things being served. Can you eat guest food? As a performer, I can. I'm able to eat in the specialty restaurants, which you have to pay for. I can also eat in the Windjammer, but after a certain time, and I can only eat there for dinner. But there's a lot of other places on the ship that I'm not able to eat. So it really depends on where I'm going and what time I'm going also. But depending on your ranking and your privileges, you might be able to go and eat basically anywhere on the ship. There are definitely people who can, but I myself cannot do that. Can you bring your own snacks on board? Yes, we can. It depends what it is. You're not allowed to bring like produce or fresh food like that, but you can bring snacks on board. It's just nice to have some snacks available to you. Also, it is a bit cheaper than buying them on board because we do have a spot where we can buy chips and chocolates and things like that. But obviously a grocery store is bigger, has more options, and it might be a little bit cheaper. I really haven't been buying many snacks this contract, so I've been pretty good there, but it has been tempting. Do you ever get themed meals for holidays? Yes, usually for Independence Days or big holidays, they will do a really nice meal for the crew members, which is great, especially because we're away from home. During the holidays, it can be very tough, so they usually put a nice big meal together for us, and they'll serve us really nice desserts and sodas and things like that. Is alcohol allowed for crew? Yes, of course. If you're 21 or older, you can consume alcohol on board. It's not free, we have to purchase it, but the prices are very, very, very affordable. Where do the crew hang out after work? So there's a few places we can hang out. We have a crew bar, just for crew members only. There's also like a game area, so they have TVs with Xbox or PS4, but they have like FIFA and things like that. There's also foosball table, pool table, ping pong table. There's an inside area with couches and darts and some music instruments as well. So there's quite a few places there where we can hang out. There's also an area where there's a bunch of computers, and they do host a lot of activities and tournaments for us. So that is usually where you will find crew members when they're not working. Do you have vending machines on board? We do not. What's your favorite meal from the crew mess? I don't know my favorite meal from the crew mess, but the meal that I eat the most often is a big salad with a lot of veggies, chicken breast, olive oil, pesto. That's like my go-to meal with a side of French fries. Moving on to the next topic, money and benefits. Do you pay for accommodation? We do not. We're very fortunate in that sense. We don't have to pay for our accommodations on board. Do you pay for food on board? Also do not pay for food unless it's a specialty restaurant, but on a day-to-day, you don't go to a specialty restaurant, you don't have to pay for food. Do you pay for flights to the ship? This is another thing we do not have to pay for, and as you know, flights can be very expensive, especially when you are traveling overseas. Like I signed on in Europe, so I didn't have to pay for my flights. They were booked for me, and I just have to show up and get on the flight. That definitely saves me a lot of money. Do you get vacation pay? As much as I would love to say yes, unfortunately we do not. We are contracted, so when the contract is up, we don't make any money. Do you get discounts on cruises? This is a really great perk that I have taken advantage of pretty much every contract. So we do get discounted cruises. It is a quite extensive process, but we can get a discount for family and friends. So whenever I have my parents come to cruise, I will go through this system and I can get them a bit of a discount to come see me, which is really nice. And if I myself wanted to cruise on a ship, I would go through the same process and could also get that discount. Do you save a lot of money while working? So this really depends person to person. This contract, I'm still saving a ton of money, but I am spending more of it because we are traveling to these incredible places and I want to make the most of the travel experience, and things cost money. So here I'm not saving quite as much, but typically I do save majority of the money I make on board. I'm talking like 95% of the money that I make on board, I do save. Can you send money home easily? Yeah, you can do everything online. It's very easy. You just connect it and transfer the money. Are crew tips included in salary? No, and we don't receive any tips. At least as a performer, we don't receive tips. Do you get medical insurance on board? Yes, so I kind of touched on this earlier. We are covered medically while we are working on board, while we're contracted. So when I go home at the end of the contract, I will have to pay for my own insurance again. But here we are covered, which is really great. So when I got my MRI and X-ray and all my other appointments, I did not have to pay out of pocket for any of that. Do you have to pay for laundry? I do not have to pay for laundry. I just have to buy laundry detergent or laundry pods. That's the only thing that I'm required to pay for. But actually using the machines, it's free, which is a really great benefit. We are speeding right along to the next topic, which is social life. Is it easy to make friends on board? I would say yes, it's very easy. We are all here for the same shared love for travel and living at sea. So we do have that in common. Most people that work on board are really open to meeting people and making friends. So yeah, just be yourself and be open to meeting all sorts of people. And I would say it's really easy to make friends. What is the crew bar like? I mean, it's a bar. They play music, they have different theme nights, like parties, music. They've got karaoke some nights, and it really depends on the ship. Some ships it's really busy, some it's quiet. Here I would say is a pretty social ship, even with it being in Europe. Can you date other crew members on board? Yes, you can date another crew member. Are there rules about relationships? It's kind of piggybacking off the previous question. There are not necessarily rules for dating on board. You just have to both be crew members. You cannot date a guest. That is a big no-no. How diverse are the crew nationalities? We have, I don't know how many different countries we have on board, but the ship is extremely diverse. So we have people from literally all over the world, and I think that is the coolest thing. I really don't think you would get that sort of experience with any other job. Do you ever feel lonely on board? I honestly don't. I really love spending time by myself, and I try to find a balance of spending time alone and then also spending time with friends around me. And if you do ever feel lonely, like you have people to lean on, which is really great, but this isn't really something I ever feel. Do crew and officers hang out together? Of course. I personally don't really hang out with officers, but all crew members sort of mingle and mix, and there's no real separation there, which is, I don't know why there would be or should be, but everyone mixes and mingles and it's all good. What I will say about this though is that it is common for people of the same job to sort of hang out with one another. So as a performer, I'm primarily hanging out with the people in my cast because those are the people I'm closest with. But I'm also friends with some of the dancers in the production cast, and I have made friends throughout my years on ships with many people in many different positions that have nothing to do with performing or entertainment at all. And I think it's really important to make friends outside of your specific workplace. And this is actually a question I get asked all the time, is if I have friends in other departments, and the answer is yes. What do you do for fun after work? A bunch of different things. We like to play cards. I love to read. Any sort of social activity is really fun. We want to get into playing Nintendo Switch again. We haven't done that. So that's something that we're going to look forward to. Movie nights, yeah, all that sort of stuff. Do you celebrate birthdays on board? We do. I did vlog my 28th birthday, if you want to see that. It was a couple months ago. Yeah, friends on board are so great because they really go out of their way to make your birthday special, and it's always really fun. I've spent many birthdays at sea, so it's always been very memorable, and I'm always grateful to have good people around me to make the day so much fun. Last question for this topic, is there a lot of drama on board? I would be lying if I said no, because of course there's drama on board. I'm not really involved in any drama, so that's great. But we are working and living in the same environment with the same people, so things are gonna happen sometimes, If you've watched Below Deck, it's not really like that, but that can sort of give you an idea. Although that's very different because they're living on a yacht and there's only a couple of them, but you can get the picture. What is going on up there? Guys, we have made it to the last 10 questions of the list, and the last topic is career and personal. How did you get this job? So I put together an audition tape along with a paper resume of all my skating accomplishments throughout my competitive career, and I sent an email with those both attached. Expressed my interest in the job. I had a phone call briefly, and then I was offered the job as a pro skater on board. But I'm hired actually through a separate company. Kind of building on that, is it hard to get hired? I would say it's pretty competitive and difficult to get hired to be a performer as an ice skater on board. Skating is a very specialized sport, but there is a lot of really talented people out there. There is a certain level of skill that you need to have in order to be considered for the job. So I am very proud to have been working on board for the last 6 years. 93, do you need experience to work on a cruise ship? Depends what you're doing. As a skater, of course, you need to have a background in that, but a lot of the jobs on board you don't necessarily need to have experience or a degree in or any sort of background in. You can be trained on board, which I think is really great if you are looking for a new experience or you're looking to travel the world. This is the way to do it. You get to see the world, you get to make money, and you're traveling for free, basically. Do you see yourself doing this forever? Definitely not. This is not something that I can do for the rest of my life. I could go on for many, many years, but there's many other things in my life that I would like to do, especially in my younger years. So as incredible of an opportunity as this job is and all the memories that I've made, I definitely do not see myself doing this forever and ever and ever. What is the best part of your job? This is such a hard question. I have a lot of things I'd like to say. My specific job, my favorite part about performing is getting to bring joy to other people. So getting to see people in the audience, see their face, their excitement, and just bring a smile to their face, that is such a rewarding feeling. But I guess in a general sense of, working on board, it's 100% the travel. At this point, I've traveled to 48 countries, which is crazy, and majority of the countries that I've seen were because of working on board. Okay, on the flip side, what is the worst part about this job? The worst part is being away from home for so long. Even though I don't get homesick, it's just really hard to miss out on big moments in friends and family's lives. And it's also not like we can just fly home for a couple days and come back. You come here and you stay here for the entire contract. How long do most people stay in this career? Working on board, I'm not sure. It really just varies person to person. Also, the situation of where they're from, if they're, providing for their family, or what their specific goals are to get out of this job. As an ice skater, I would say most skaters do anywhere from like 2 to 5 years on average. Obviously, there's people who have been going longer than that. And also there's people that realize that this life is not for them and they'll do just like one contract. But I'd say average is like 2 to 5 years. 98, I already answered this question in another question, but do you ever get homesick? I do not get homesick. I would say the hardest time that it ever was to be on board where I really just wanted to be home was when my grandma passed away. I just wanted to be with my family. And luckily I did get to go home for the services and to just have that time with my family, but it wasn't immediate. So yeah, that was probably the only time that I was really, really homesick. And also my very first contract, it was my first contract away from home for Thanksgiving, and I FaceTimed my family. They were all at the dinner table together, and I did get a little bit of homesickness then. But aside from those 2 times, I don't usually get homesick. Question 99, would you recommend this job to others? 1000% yes. I would say if this is something you're interested in, go for it. You've got nothing to lose, and it really is a once in a lifetime experience. It's unlike anything that you will ever encounter in your life, and you can meet so many amazing people and just make such amazing memories and learn so much about the world and yourself and other people, and I definitely recommend it to anyone. And for the last question, what advice would you give someone wanting to work on a cruise ship? My best advice is that if you have an itch for this and you see yourself living on a cruise ship and trying out this lifestyle, just fully go for it and just be 100% open to all the experiences. And at the end of the day, just stay true to yourself, because you're gonna meet so many different people from so many different backgrounds, and You are one of a kind and you are unique, so just always stay true to yourself and never sway from that. And just like that, we did it. 100 frequently asked questions about cruise ship life. I hope this was informative and entertaining, and I hope you're not too sick of hearing me talk, because that was a lot. But this was really fun. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, leave me a comment down below, give it a thumbs up, and if you have any suggestions for videos in the future, also let me know down below. I always love hearing your feedback. Thank you guys so much for watching and being here every week. I'm so grateful for this community, and I hope you all know how much I appreciate and value each and every one of you. So I love you all to the moon and back. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.